That is an answer that he tried to get over the years, and well, that resulted in the culmination of creative instinct, business acumen, and commercial insight, which makes Siddharth Roy Kapur a movie Mughal that he is. His production house, Roy Kapur Films, in association with Ronnie Screwvala, Ashwini Iyer Tiwari, and Nitesh Tiwari, have whipped up a new offering, Tumse Na Ho Payega. Now, currently streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar, it also delves into the story of an entrepreneur played by Ishwak Singh and his journey to the top. Now, Tumse Na Ho Payega is an adaptation of Varun Agarwal's 2012 book, How I Braved Anu Aunty and Co-Founded a $1 million company. Now, to tell us more about how this movie came together, the world of OTT, and of course, the revival of the box office, and of course, the magic of movies, Siddharth Roy Kapur joins me in this Mirror Now exclusive. Siddharth, thank you for your time. Great to catch up with you after so many years. Let me begin by asking you this. Of course, Tumse Na Ho Payega seems like an extremely exciting venture. I've in fact had the chance to watch it myself. Gave me a lot of Dil Chahta Hai vibes, but for the new generation. All about friendships, startups, career choices, and most importantly, society expectations. What made you say yes to making this? And you always have interesting tales about how movies, have come to you. So is there any interesting tale about how this one came into being as well?
Yeah, no, I think the way you've put it is just right. It really talks about the spirit of entrepreneurship, the feelings that a young India has about not conforming to the norm, trying to do something different, trying to chart their own path, and not really adhering to notions of what success used to mean to their parents' generation. I was actually in IIM Lucknow a few years ago giving a talk, and I walked off the stage. And I bumped into Varun Agarwal, who was the next speaker who was coming onto stage. And, in that melee of one speaker going off and one speaker coming on, he handed me a copy of his book called How I Braved Anu Aunty and Co-Founded a $1 million company, and told me it'll be a fun read on my flight back to Bombay. And he was right. It was hilarious. I was cracking up laughing. And I also found it really like a book that spoke to the aspirations of what their parents' generation likes to call the slacker generation, but who are not really slackers. They just want to do what they want to do and not conform to the norms and ideas of what they are expected to do. And I found it a really fun, refreshing book. And I spoke to Nitesh Tiwari actually, and we were sort of making dangal at that time. And he told me he just read it as well and loved the book too. And that's when we decided that we needed to acquire the rights and make it. And that's really where the journey began.
So that as you speak about that, of course, Tumse Na Ho Payega has also tried to tell the story of breaking the shackles of what we call the quintessential norms of Indian society's approved career choices. In fact, there was a time when it was all about becoming a doctor, an engineer, and now, of course, we're surely seeing that change, more entrepreneurs, or rather the creative content aspect. But a large part of that is because of that fear of log kya kahenge. What are people going to say? Is perhaps the most used phrase in the Indian society, Siddharth, which really pulls back a lot of people to actually do what they aspire.
You're right. And what we try to do in the film, with the book was done a few years ago, so social media had not had such a big impact as it's had in the last few years. We try to bring in the impact of how social media has actually amplified that even more, where the log kya kahenge is now not just your immediate friends and family ecosystem, but a much larger group that you feel you're exposed to. And therefore, the pressure, I think, on the younger generation is that much higher, because there are all these ideals and notions of what success means. And everyone's curating examples of their own life and putting it out there to let everyone else know how successful and happy they are. And that forms so much more of, a pressure on the younger generation, because they all believe that everyone else is having it so good, and why is my life not really taking off? That is an added pressure in addition to the log kya kahenge thing that used to happen in the past. And we've tried to address that too, where, finally, the idea really is that the only true definition of success is the way that you define your own life and whether you're successful in your own eyes. And it should not be other people who have the ability to be able to make you feel that you're not.
In fact, with the fact that you did say about how social media has changed a lot of things. So, of course, clearly in the past few years, the spotlight has been on entrepreneurs' business. The story, of course, in this talks about the food startup culture while celebrating the entrepreneurial spirit. But, of course, there is no one better than you to speak about the art of business. Now, when you're putting up businesses also, it's setting up for the highs and the lows, comes with failures too. So, Siddharth, what were your failures that really set you up for the longer haul? I'm pretty sure a lot of them would want to take cues from that.
In the film business, I think you really need to develop a pretty thick skin because you're only as good as your last Friday. And, the success rate of your ventures tends to be quite low because there are so many movies that are made. And, finally, you hope your successes are more than your failures, but you can't avoid failure. And I think in the media industry, failure is very public. It's not something that, if you were in any other profession, it's not always that people get to know how you're doing in your job. But I think in the movie business, everyone knows whether you had a hit or a flop. And I think that really gives you the resilience if you're able to make it in this profession to dust yourself off and just keep moving on and just look at the lessons that you can learn from a failure and then just move on to the next, project. That I think is what the media and especially the movie business really makes you quite ready for. So innumerable, examples of failures one has experienced that one has had to just learn from and then hopefully not make the same mistakes again, but make new ones.
Speaking about that, of course, there are many genres of content out there. And as a producer, for you to pick as well, what really, in your opinion, sells the quickest? And what is your understanding of the current Indian audience in engaging with the OTT platform?
Well, when you're talking about OTT content, I think people want something that, fulfills a certain need that they might have in that moment of time. So it's hard to define or say that, it's only true crime that's working or it's only biopics that are working or, that there are different genres of content that depending on your mood on any particular day, you might pick up and watch. So one has found it hard to define that there's only one genre of content that's working in streaming. But I have to say that there's been thrillers and true crime have been something that it could be a demand and supply, or it could be more supply and therefore more demand. But one way or the other, those are the genres that have really taken off in the last few years. I do think that we're ready for lighter content as well on OTT because the first few years probably saw a lot of creators putting out content that they were not able to put out otherwise in the theatrical medium. And therefore you had a lot of much more risque, much more probably violent, stuff that was not really able to be theatrical in the past. But I think today audiences are just looking to be able to, have some escapist fare as well on OTT. So I do think that really interesting family entertainment, light comedy, light drama would be genres that can work on streaming as well.
That, of course, that is the OTT aspect of it. But what I'd have to ask you is something that we're seeing after a long lull is the revival of the box office with some staggering numbers, in fact, with the recent successes that, we have seen, of course. But in your view, is there space for OTT and films to thrive at the same time? Now, this is the post-COVID era I'm talking about because many Hindi films, big ticket films, did not click at the box office. So as a producer, has it become risky or all the more exciting? Or was that a wake-up call of sorts for producers? How do you really see this?
I think if you cut back to two years ago when we were just coming out of COVID or in the throes of it and just slowly limping back, there were questions around, are people ever going to come back to theaters or not? Is cinema dead? And I think the answer this year has been a resounding, yes to the fact that people are going to come back to theaters. So I think that question has been well and truly answered. To your question about whether, streaming and theatrical can exist at the same time, absolutely it can. Whenever there's a new technology or a new way of consuming content, there's always been a question around the old one, right? So when radio existed and then TV came in, the question was around, is radio dead? Then when the VHS came in and people started watching content at home, it was about, are they going to, stop watching linear television? Are they going to stop going to the cinema halls? What one has realized is that as new technologies come in, people therefore adapt their ways of viewing to, in different contexts, watching content in a different medium. But it's not like one medium dies out completely. It just makes way for the others. And I think India especially is a market, given our trajectory, where we're what I like to call an and market. We're not an or market. It's not like you need to choose between one or the other. It just keeps adding up, and every medium tends to keep growing. Print is growing, radio is growing, cinema is growing, streaming is growing, music is growing. All the sectors within media are growing exponentially in the last year or so. And I think that's a great sign.
Also talking about recent times, what we've seen is the Hollywood writers' strike, which of course essentially has put the spotlight on them not getting the due credit. But Siddharth, back here in India, what is something that you would like to see a change in as far as opportunities for writers is concerned?
I think structured training opportunities for writers are the need of the hour. And I know that writers feel that quite acutely, where right now it's just innate talent that has to come to the surface and therefore work. But the opportunities for them to actually be trained in screenplay writing, in the art of writing, in writing for television, in writing for streaming, those structured opportunities don't exist. You pretty much have to learn on the job, and just if you're innately talented, then you make it. I think as an industry, if we can all come together to make much more of that happen, we're all doing it in our own individual way. But if we come together as an industry, that I think will be a tremendous service to the writing community and to the filmmaking community.
All right, Siddharth, as you point that out, of course, you've always been associated with exciting projects, which is such a treat for audiences. So what else can audiences look forward to from your stable in the coming months?
Thank you for saying that. We've got Pippa, which is a war film based around the 71 Bangladesh war. We've got Wo Ladki Hai Kahan, which is a really fun road trip film where two unlikely people get together to find that they're not actually as different as they thought they were. We've got a few shows that I can't talk about right now because the platforms will announce it at the right time. We've got The Anarchy, which is an adaptation of William Dalrymple's book, that we're setting up as an international project. And there's an action thriller that we're starting in October with Shahid Kapoor in the lead and Roshan Andrews directing.
All right, that of course sounds extremely exciting. Siddharth, thank you very much for your time and speaking to us here on Mirror Now. And definitely we're going to be seeing you at the movies. Thank you once again for your time. And on that note, that's all I have for you in this edition